All right, in today's video, we're going to be discussing a topic that seems to be happening invisibly, but right in front of our eyes. And that is the currency reset, which in a lot of ways, it has begun in a very invisible way. And ultimately, this leads many people to gold, silver, and mining stocks. And so today we're talking with Michael. He is the CEO of Vizsla Silver, publicly traded silver stock in Canada and in America on the OTC. They are also the sponsor of our channel. That's Vizsla Silver. And so make sure you hit the like button on this side right over there and this side right over there. And what I'd love for you to do is give us your number one reason that you think a currency reset, either invisible and happening without our awareness, or a conscious devaluation of currency is occurring. Give us your number one idea or your number one sign of why you think that it is happening. And nice to see you, Mike.
You too, Jake. And you mentioned sponsor. We're a very happy sponsor. You know, I always appreciate your content, and it's great to be on the show again.
Awesome. Yeah, it's nice to have you. So basically the question is like, if you go far enough down the rabbit hole to precious metals or mining stocks, you can debate what's better, what's not better. But when you bring it back to a larger subject and you say, well, what leads most people to it? And it's this idea of a currency reset, either intentionally or just an invisible devaluation of currency. And so I wanted to ask you, what do you think are the most obvious and important parts that have ultimately led you to your belief in sound money, but from a macro environment that's led you when you've opened your eyes and looked at this devaluation or reset of currency?
Yeah, I think, anytime that you're driven to look at or own, precious metals like silver, I've got, silver here in front of me.
Hold it up bigger.
Hold it up bigger. Okay.
Yeah, your hand was in the way.
Anytime that you're looking at sound money and hard assets, I think it has to come with a level of distrust of the government or distrust of the system, because this is kind of personal responsibility, personal financial responsibility to own, something that's been money for thousands of years. So, whether, I think we've had a conversation in the past if there's a kind of a great reset coming of currency, whether there is or there isn't. I don't think there's any real downside of owning hard assets, silver, gold, and the companies that produce them.
I was talking to Michael Saylor earlier. He's the CEO of MicroStrategy and kind of one of the first big companies that's just said, heck, I'm not going to keep my money in fiat. And I thought it was interesting because he was saying that he believes that March 2020 was a big wake up to a lot of people that maybe have been drinking the Kool-Aid and thinking that in 2011 they fixed everything and everything was back to normal. Mm-hmm. And he was talking about how 2020 was a wake up for him, where he was like, wow, what are we doing holding all of this cash when they're just devaluate? There's no real value that it's holding if they're doing these things. And so I'm curious, what was that wake up moment for you in your own life that ultimately led you to precious metals?
Well, and definitely. And what I would also say, just to that point a little bit earlier as well, too, is that I think, that person, Michael Saylor, is probably among a number of other people that over this last year have really opened their eyes to silver, gold, hard money, real money, but also, you can include Bitcoin and cryptos in there as well, but alternative currencies. And I look at silver as an alternative currency as well. Now, the other thing is that the silver squeeze, I think, has just begun as well. But, we have a whole new generation of investors that are looking at this now and have become educated, which is just fantastic. But for me, that education point actually happened with my father. So I was actually looking at the chart just to make sure that before we jumped on here, to make sure that I had the price that I probably bought silver at first, and it was about $5 probably an ounce.
Wow.
And this bar is part of that collection of real silver and gold that I have. But that was in the mid 2000s, so the early 2000s. And, from there it's doubled. But, the idea was that, it's prudent. It's always been prudent throughout history to own silver, gold, and in times where, as we've just talked about here, where there's new investors come in, they're taking supply of silver out of the market and taking physical delivery of it to have as a safe haven asset or to have as an investment or currency. I think it's an excellent time also to look at owning the companies that produce these metals.
I'm not sure if I told you, but the same thing, I woke up to the financial system from my dad too. I'm not sure if I told you that. I came home Thanksgiving, freshman year of college, and my dad's hair was straight up and he was over the computer and he was like, "Come here." And he was like, "Look, there's this thing, the Federal Reserve, and here's what they do with the money." And I was studying economics. And the first time I ever bought silver, also, my dad took me to a bullion dealer. And that was the first time I bought it too. So
yeah,
that's kind of funny.
That's great. And there was a book, I think it was called Creature from Jekyll Island. Have you read that?
Yep.
Yeah, I remember seeing that when I was probably 12 or 13 or something like that. And, it's... it was something that was kind of, and it's what brought me to the mining industry as well too. It's just, it's something that I think I've mentioned this to you before in the past as well. But the first time I walked the floor of a conference and there was Rick Rule and all these people talking, Doug Casey talking. It was kind of a eye-opening experience, and I thought, wow, this is amazing. There's a group of investors, people that are looking to make money. But also, are kind of protecting themselves and protecting their families' financial freedom by, purchasing these silver and gold. So it's really the more you get into it, the more interesting it all becomes, I think.
So it's obvious whether it's an intentional reset or an unintentional reset that is a consequence of infinite money printing that thus devalues the currency and resets or revalues the things that you can buy with the currency. It's happening right in front of our eyes. Now, one of the side effects of that is, of course, people are just buying. Anyone that has some sense and some money is just buying things to get out of their currency. I mean, we're kind of running into a head a little bit in the housing market in the U.S. at least. I saw new mortgages are down. I believe what I saw today was 39% over the last month due to the yields rising. But they'll have to step in here because obviously the housing market is such an important component. But one thing that's caused of that is it's made people buy houses. It's made people buy crypto. It's made people buy gold. It's made people buy silver. It's made people buy the S&P and stocks that they hope will outperform. And it's just, you're seeing a move out of cash at a quicker rate. And probably also because of the internet, you're seeing a increased level of awareness of people that are starting to go, is this a giant Ponzi scheme?
Yeah.
And out of that, of course, one of those things that is a tiny market that, can get squeezed is silver. So as the CEO of Vizsla, as a publicly traded CEO and someone who's in the ins and outs of the market, I would imagine that you're starting to get excited as you see this type of crunch on the supply. I believe 70% of silver is in industrial use and 30% is in retail. And that retail move is pushing into the industrial. And it begs this question of, where is this going? So give me your thoughts on that. I have to think that as someone who owns, assets in the ground, that's got to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, there's a number of forces on the supply of silver that are impacting the supply and the demand of silver right now. And of course, one that kind of took everybody from as a surprise, I think, is this Wall Street Bets Reddit silver group that's come in and decided that they want to own as much silver as possible. And I was looking earlier today on online, and it's people are kind of proudly showing their stacks of silver. I've never seen that before, on Twitter or anything. That's incredible. So what people maybe don't understand about silver is how tight of a market it is. So, really when you're looking at the balance of supply and where that goes to in demand, as you said, industrially, it has a huge amount of utility. It has the money, the monetary side of as a currency or similar to gold, and it's been considered currency for many, many years, many thousands of years. So, we're in this situation here where anything that kind of comes as a surprise to silver can really impact the price, and we're starting to see that now with the silver squeeze. I don't think that's over. I think that what's happened is this is taking time to pull that currency, get delivery, get it out of the COMEX market, get it into physical hands. And I don't think that's going to end. I think, the more stimulus checks that people will get, some of it, probably most of it's going to go into cryptocurrencies and S&P, but a large portion of that is going to go into silver as well and gold, because I think, you're looking at a larger scale distrust of what the monetary system is based on. And it's basically based on bankers that jump around to the Federal Reserve and print money. So it's really, it's probably the best time ever to be in silver. And then you're also looking at what is the impact of the Green New Deal? What is the impact of electrical vehicles? The battery technology, what does that do to silver? And, I think silver is probably the most impacted market. It's such a tight and small market that as soon as, you bring in solar panels, as soon as you bring in electrification and electric vehicles into that demand picture there, you're really impacting the silver price. And now you look at where's this new silver going to come from? There's not a lot of big silver mines being brought online anytime soon. And the best place for that is Mexico and some other South American countries. But of course, Vizsla, my company, we're building a silver miner in Mexico. So I mean, you can see we kind of talked about it through this this interview so far. You can see why I was brought to or drawn to the silver market. Looking at the supply and demand, it's just such a tight market, and any of these effects, anything like this, electrification, retail buying can really affect the price. And the best place to be, in my opinion, other than owning it, physically holding it, is looking for it and producing it in the near term. And that's what we're doing with Vizsla.
Yeah. Silver, to me, the reason I started investing in silver after, just buying a monster box here or there when my dad brought me in my first time. But when I started getting more especially into mining stocks, I own a lot of everything. I own some gold. I own a good amount of Bitcoin. I own a good amount of physical silver. I own uranium, and I own a lot of silver stocks. And the reason that I like silver is I don't think of it quite as much about a traditional fiat currency go down, silver go up, or Bitcoin go up, or gold go up. I think about it really, the compelling angle to me is the supply and demand fundamentals of it. And I think it's one of the most misunderstood things in the world, because people say, oh, the price isn't going up, nobody cares about this thing. Why buy this when you could buy gold or Bitcoin or the S&P? And I think silver is very unloved in that people don't understand the very compelling supply and demand story that will play out, not in 6 months, it's going to play out over the next 10 to 15 years. Mm-hmm. And that's the electrification. That's the reality that our economy is so screwed that the only way they're going to be able to keep this afloat is they're going to do infrastructure bill after infrastructure bill after infrastructure bill to give people jobs, to bang holes in the ground, to put electrical vehicle signs where public toilets used to be. I mean, it's going to, and what do you need for that? You need silver and you need copper. And the unintended consequences of manipulating the paper markets of commodities is that they become very underinvested, right? And that's why you're able to buy your land in Vizsla on the cheap, right? Like there is great opportunities in that, but the unintended side effects of it is as you devalue currency, but you need it for industry, what happens is it creates a really compelling long-term opportunity that, especially in the mining stocks, once the squeeze, which isn't a one-time event, as you keep having an increased demand, whereas gold has use, but it is a far bigger market, and there's far less of it that is needed for the future than there is in silver. Mm-hmm. And to me, that's been very compelling. Is that one of the things that attracted you to silver over gold, and what has made you so interested in it?
Yeah, absolutely. And, even me personally, that's absolutely what's exciting about silver. But I've been hearing it as well from the financial institutions that I talk to and the groups that I talk to, is that silver, gold is a bit difficult right now if we're talking about fund buying and investment from even, generalist funds or also resource-focused funds. But if you're looking at silver and its demand as it comes to equities in financial institutions, silver is still seen as quite favorable. And the reason for that is because they look at the impact of electrification, electric vehicles on the silver space. They look at it, they say, well, okay, that really has a huge impact on silver. But if you look at what it means to copper, it still has a big impact on copper. But copper is just it's an order of magnitude of a size of a larger market. So really, if you want bang for your buck, if you want that multiplier effect of Teslas and all these, the electric Mustang that I've been hearing about, and all these, I think I saw Ford's going to have all their pickups, this is insane. This is a huge amount this is a huge undertaking. We've talked about this in the past as well, but my first mining company that we built and sold was a cobalt company, and we were kind of early on that cobalt trade. Now, logically, to me, I thought that we with silver we'd be in an excellent position, and we're starting to see this play out. This is early. I think silver still breaks 30 this year, but continues to go to all new highs. But I've heard it said before that if you're looking at a solar panel, if you're looking at a battery or a car, electric car, the price of silver going from 26 to 50 isn't a huge amount, because there's it's on a large scale that there's the silver's input there. But if you what I'm trying to say is that these markets can tolerate higher silver prices, and I think that'll have to go there, both as an incentive for exploration and development, but also because just because of the supply and demand fundamentals.
Have you been ever able? I've heard before. I don't know if I heard it from Keith Neumeyer or if it was just a random person that I was listening to, but I've heard that a lot of the electronic companies and car companies won't give an accurate measure of the commodities that they use, and that certainly includes silver. As someone who's very involved in the back end and business of silver, have you guys ever been able to get any type of accurate measures on that?
No, and it makes sense. I think they don't want to be vulnerable when it comes to that, and that you see that with battery manufacturers in Asia as well too. I was involved in a company that's developing a nickel mine in Asia, and it's the same thing. They partnered with the battery companies, but they're not. They're private. They don't need to really. They keep those cards close to their chest.
That's funny. Yeah, it's just another one of those things that's quite interesting. One of the things that I find that is a side effect, as I said earlier, about the devaluation of currency and this type of essentially reset of currency and revaluation of anything you can buy with currency, is that you see, especially in commodities, you said one of the things that about the price move is, in some ways, you just need it purely to incentivize more discovery. And it's the same problem happening in uranium, which is a very exciting investment to me, because you're seeing the same theme in a lot of commodities, which is there hasn't been any money put in. Everyone's been investing into tech and hello, we actually need these things in order to have this tech future. And so now you're starting to see the same type of squeeze on the available supply in uranium starting to happen. You're starting to see companies actually even buying, issuing new shares in order to fundraise uranium. What do you think about that? And do you think that there's any possibility that would ever occur in the silver market, a similar thing that, for instance, UEC and Denison are doing?
Yeah, well, first of all, I would say that this is probably, the mining space is probably the new Silicon Valley, because, all of this, over the next 10, 15 years, as you said, this has been the most drastically underfunded industry for many, many years. And if we want Teslas, and if we want all the infrastructure for all the things that are being created in the technology realm, we absolutely need nuclear power. We absolutely need infrastructure and grid improvements from copper, and we absolutely need silver. And so, I think that after, 10 years almost of complete bear market underfunding, companies like Vizsla or, other uranium companies would have had a very hard time raising money to go and drill holes and create new inventory for every ounce or pound that they've taken out of the ground. And now, you see that in silver, certainly, but you also see that in copper. And copper is important because a lot of silver comes from a byproduct of copper as well. And so we haven't had any major copper mines in South America been put into production. We're close with a group that's built the last one in Chile. It was $2-3 billion capex to do that. And now we need to, in order to kind of satisfy the copper demands, there's going to need to be about 20 or 40 of those, for the next 20 years. It's a huge amount of capex. So this has been so underfunded. And you see the same thing in silver. I mean, what was the last major silver mine put into production? There aren't any very, very large silver mines. San Dimas, which is First Majestic's flagship there in Mexico, that's a large one. Palmarejo for Core. So when you're looking at a big silver project, you're looking at 12 million ounces per annum of equivalent. And of that, you may have 6 million, 7 million ounces of silver being produced. So, it's such a small market from the production side as well, that, you're really going to need to incentivize it with dollars. And that's where that, increase in metal price comes from as well. And, it's we're starting to see that over the last year, where there have been more companies coming to market doing exploration. But I think where you really want to be is in a sweet spot of silver companies or equities is that move from exploration to resource to production. And of course, I think eventually there's going to be consolidation. Now we're building Vizsla Silver to be the large New York listed silver producer. That's a goal that we have as a company. So we would look possibly to be the acquirer at that point, but there's going to be a huge amount of consolidation in the market at some point as well too, which is obviously attractive. You're looking at that in the gold space right now, and companies are getting significant premiums to what they're trading at right now.
Is there a price at which you would take a price per ounce of silver at which you would more seriously want to come online, or is there a goal at a time frame at which you would want to come online as a mine?
Yeah, I would say that we're unique in the sense that we have a mill and a plant that's under option to us, and so as soon as we decide that we are willing to make the payment and own that mill, we can essentially be in production. And so the project's impressed us so much that I think we're moving ever closer to that. But I would say that it's likely in the near future.
Has seeing Denison and UEC issuing shares to go out and buy and front run the hedge funds and utilities, has that sparked any conversation or thoughts amongst you, or do you think amongst other, gold would be harder, but silver obviously such a smaller market? Has it sparked any thoughts?
Well, it definitely does. I guess the question is, how long can prices stay where they are? Is it better to stick to your core business, which is putting money into the ground and building a mine. Now, if you're producing, that's different. And I think another way of doing that, of course, is stockpiling or withholding. Keith did that with First Majestic, and I think he faced a fair amount of criticism at first, and then it worked out very, very well for him. So, there are ways to do that. Now, as a company that's ourselves Visa Silver, we're pre-production, so I don't think it's not necessarily prudent for us to do that at this point. I think the best dollars that we're spending is the dollar that we're putting into the drill hole to put silver into a resource there, because we have such an abundance of silver on that in that project that I think we're finding it for cheaper than we can buy it.
From the mainstream perspective, you're in Vancouver, which is obviously a financial hub, especially for commodities. How has the interest been in silver, and specifically silver companies and I guess commodities in general, from the types of people that you're rubbing elbows with and the types of conversations that you have? How would you gauge it?
Well, silver's, it's really interesting. I've started to have more of these conversations in my life than I ever have. And a lot of them will start in real estate, and then I'll kind of get my people say, wow, have you seen the market? It's crazy. Nothing's going for, under asking, or people are really just piling into the real. And I say, well, it's not just real estate. It's, it's any real hard asset. It's, and silver and, surprisingly, there's, a lot of educated, general public people that have been buying silver, that are looking at equities, now, mind you, Vancouver has a history of having a speculative stock exchange that was focused entirely on mining. It's you can't throw a bar of silver too far without hitting someone who's familiar with the mining industry, and so that might be a play. But I think it's the early stages, early innings of going mainstream. And if you remember, as I was kind of getting my feet wet in the professional side of the mining industry, a decade plus ago, I remember reading titles of you pull up BC Business or Canadian Business or whatever magazine, and you'd have the three top guys of XYZ Mining Corp on the front, and the public was kind of there. I remember reading one title, something Rockstar, and it's a mining guy on it, and we're not even anywhere close to that yet. So I think it's early innings of the kind of public uptake of of these stories, but it's really encouraging. I don't know the specifics. Maybe you might know a little bit more about it than I do, but I've been seeing something about billboards for the silver squeeze being put out around the world, and I thought that was kind of that's kind of cool.
Yeah, some of my Twitter friends they raised a bunch of money too, over $50,000. I think a lot more than that. I think that was the goal, and they kind of blew that out of the water. Let me ask you, what is your opinion on the way that this unfolds here? Right now, we have, I think presently at the time you and I are speaking, which is Wednesday, March 17th. We'll publish this, obviously not today on the 17th, in the next couple of days. But today we've got Jerome Powell from the Fed supposed to be speaking. We have rising 10-year rates, they froze quite a lot. And it's made everyone very unsure. And normally everyone's had a pretty good idea of what the Fed was going to do. The last time Jerome Powell spoke, the markets crashed, which was, I'm sure he didn't get too many pats on the butt after that from his buddies. So, you've got this really bizarre situation where nothing's been fixed. I mean, America and Canada, obviously a lot of people have lost their jobs, but globally, a lot of the developing countries were based off of tourism, and that's gone. And so globally, you have a lot of unknowns, I guess would be the best way to put it. And you look at it and you go, for America, $1,400. I mean, a lot of people are 12 months behind on their rent or mortgage. $1,400 is 6 weeks worth of support. And a lot of places still haven't opened up yet. And I'm curious what your estimation, and the reason I ask is obviously these are the important nuances that ultimately lead many to invest in silver and mining related equities. What is your opinion on where we go from here on March 17th, and what nobody has a crystal ball, but what is your personal opinion on what happens moving forward here?
Well, I remember it was just a year ago that we had the crash, in March, and starting off the year, silver was $18, and so we had a pretty turbulent time, the whole world shutting down. It's interesting. I kind of feel like anything can happen right now. I feel like we're on the verge of something. Whatever it'll be that'll take the gold, the next leg up, and silver, and but you also see, if it's really tough to say. I don't know, and you said it's March 17th. I guess we'll have a better insight later today where the markets are headed. But I don't think we're out of the woods entirely yet. But I do kind of counterbalance that between you're right. A lot of people are struggling, and a lot of places are closed down. But a lot of people have been able to work and speculate, make money in the market, and make money on crypto and that type of thing. And people that have been able to work, maybe from home, have basically been saving money. So, I think you have the risk that benefits, of an uncertain market, the risk that benefits the monetary function of silver and gold. But also, you also have the driver of, people with a huge amount of savings, people that are pent up, that want to go out and party and travel and, go to Spain or go wherever, right? And as all this kind of opens up a little bit more over the next little while, you'll see kind of potentially a roaring 20s where people will consume more and more basic things that we need. And part of that, of course, is silver. Part of that is copper. And, but there's still going to be the risk, I think, and the fact that, there's such a huge amount of money printing in the world that's going to be beneficial for gold. So all that to say is, I don't know where we're headed. It could be, I'm prepared to be surprised, I think. But I think there's kind of forces that are at play here that are undeniable too.
Did you see that the footage of the speaking of people are ready to party? Did you see the footage of the Boulder, Colorado parties that were happening? So that's I guess an example of people are ready to get out of their house. I think that
I'll flip over more Teslas. That's good for the silver market.
I think that one of the only answers, I think, especially with the Democrats in office, is going to be infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And different various infrastructure bills. And I saw a couple days ago that many quote unquote public representatives, although we know they don't represent the public, have said that as much as $4 trillion for the next infrastructure, which 1.9 plus 4 is, almost 6. And I think that it's possible that there's going to be many iterations of these infrastructure bills, not only in America, but globally. Obviously, they've said they need to get the unemployment down, and I don't know what other way they do that. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that most interests me about that is that the infrastructure is obviously primarily going to be pushed towards renewable type of occupations. And what's going to be interesting for me to watch over the next 5 years is what type of effect does that have on the pie of the available silver, which is roughly 70% for industrial, 30% for retail. We know, obviously, if they're spending the money like that, that's going to move the retail demand, but it's going to move the industrial demand. And so I'm curious, what do you think happens in a situation like that over the next handful of years, say, over the decade, let's just call it the whole decade of the 2020s, where you have an increased amount of infrastructure, bills or renewable movements or energy or tech even based movements that are eating at that 70% pie of silver at the same time that the monetary circumstances are causing in eating into the 30%. What happens in the market from a perspective of a CEO?
Well, I think it's probably at that point, it's never a better time to be building a silver mine. I would say, I think it's triple digit silver based on that type of situation, and that's what we're seeing. Of course, traditionally the gold silver ratio is much more closer to that 30-35 range there, and I think it'll probably I don't see how gold goes down much further from here. As a matter of fact, I think the bottom is in from the last few weeks here. And I think that the ratio kind of catches up to its historic average, and silver price increases. And those are the drivers. That's exactly the setup that you want to see as an investor in silver. It's almost undeniable, right? Where, like you said, the only way out of this hole is to kind of keep printing and keep building.
Yeah, you give people jobs to build bridges to nowhere. That's what
exactly.
They say in Economics in One Lesson by Hazlitt, which is Rick Rule's favorite book. They talk about building bridges to nowhere. So what do you believe as an executive of a silver company, with the intention to be a player in the growing supply-demand situation? What is your opinion on the longevity of a silver market? Obviously, gold moves, from the monetary perspective, but one of the things interesting about silver is, of course, this industrial supply and demand component and the growing need for it. And so I do wonder, is there a possibility that there's a point at which gold stops moving and the gold to silver ratio compresses, but silver doesn't go down with gold, and there is a separation from silver just as a monetary metal, and it gets treated more like a commodity? What's your opinion on all that?
Well, I think we just saw that last few weeks, and that's textbook silver. The last time that happened, silver and gold rose in tandem in the last GFC or prior to that, and then as the recovery started to happen, as the industrial demand started to rise, silver left its pairing with gold, and it broke out to the upside. And that's exactly what we've started to see here. And the other thing to keep an eye out for as well, now we're on the topic, is that when you see the price of gold and silver go down, but the equities stay the same or rise, that also shows we're in a bull market for these equities. And typically, one of the things I've been looking at is Newmont as a kind of a leading indicator, a bellwether for the equities there. And it seems that Newmont's doing quite well, and gold prices, has obviously struggled a little bit recently. But you're already seeing that, silver's stayed relatively strong to gold, and that's right out of the textbook, right out of the playbook for this next leg higher. I think it's inevitable.
Yeah, I said the other day that it reminds me of what happened if you go back to about November in uranium, which was, everyone was saying, uranium price isn't moving, this is a stupid investment. And then all of a sudden, the price didn't move, but the equities went up 200 or 300%. And I was saying, silver, we've got to see what happens with it, with interest rates in the 10-year and such, which at some point they're going to have to move it negative, just because otherwise we're going to have an insolvent government. But in the interim, what's caught my eye is it reminds me of what happened in uranium, where you're seeing people are saying, it's down, but you're having days where a lot of these stocks recently are up 5, 10, 15. There's days when a lot of them have soared even more than that. Mm-hmm. And so to me, you're starting to see a group of people that aren't buying the paper price. Now, we know the paper price isn't real. I mean, if you look at the WikiLeaks documents, you see that the derivatives market for paper was created to deter people from investing in physical metals. But is that what you're saying, that you think this is an interesting sign in the market because you're starting to see the miners move without the metals?
Yeah, I think it's probably, well, it's a sign that people think that the prices are going to go higher. I mean, if you're buying, First Majestic, I think it's probably because you think the price of silver is going to increase, and that's a good way to play it. You get a multiple, you get a multiplier effect on your capital. It's more risky, but the upside is potentially higher. And we're starting to see that. Certainly silver, particularly with I think these are kind of broadly accepted Wall Street, Main Street, that electrification is going to improve the price or add value to the price of silver. And I think you're starting to see that with funds, entering into the space, because I think the price is going to go higher. Maybe it's not this month, or maybe it's not this quarter, but maybe it's towards the end of the year and onward, right? It's it's one of these things that seems quite inevitable. And so, another thing even to point out, and we don't have to go down the whole the rabbit hole of SPACs right now, but you're starting to see these acquisition corps that are getting financed basically to go after the electrification of things as well too, and the sustainability exposure. And so part of that is absolutely silver. And so I think equity is starting to move, equity is staying strong ahead of the price of silver moving. That's right out of kind of the textbook of silver bull markets.
We need to form an SPAC and go clear out COMEX. All right.
Yeah, that might work.
So thank you for everyone listening. Make sure you hit the like button on the right side, the left side, right there down below. Give us your price predictions for silver in this decade. What will be the high at the peak of the silver bull market? Give us a comment right there down below. Mike, tell us where we can find Vizsla.
Yep, our website, vizslasilver.ca, and on Twitter and LinkedIn as well, Vizsla Silver. And feel free to message or call, and we're always happy to speak to shareholders and investors. And yeah, thank you for listening.
All right, so we'll put Mike's Twitter and the Vizsla Twitter and the website that he mentioned right there down below. Thank you for listening. Be sure to hit the like button on this side, send it out to more people. Thank you for listening to this video. And Mike is going to peel off some hectaacres of his land for whoever picks the exact perfect price for what silver is going to be this decade.
Exactly.